I thought we could talk about some of the findings that we found across all manufacturers. One of the things that struck me as odd is that the hardware across manufacturers isn't captive. So when we install dome cameras or other camera form factors, we just have come to expect captive hardware so we don't lose screws when we're mounting overhead or even at height. So seeing that many of the manufacturers don't have, or all of the manufacturers don't have captive screws, I think Dahua did an okay job with small rubber gaskets or seals around their hardware, but as soon as you back them out, that is gone. So being up on a lift or a ladder at height, trying to mount this and losing a screw is going to be a real problem. And that's true of all of the manufacturers.
I guess those might actually be a little bit worse because they're so small compared to like Axis bolt over there, or
yeah, it's
bolts
much larger for comparison.
Okay, what else you got?
So one of the other things that I thought was pretty intelligent is, and we mentioned it pretty quickly, but a little bit more detail on it. So this is a Bosch mount, and they tout it as self-leveling, which when you loosen the collar around here, it provides the ability to level this, which is important because their cameras have a gyro built in that affects analytics. So being able to, if you have the back box a little bit off level, being able to correct that and really dial it in is a really intelligent design that works well with their cameras. So one of the other things that I thought was a positive from a manufacturer, maybe overcoming a design shortcoming having many cameras with cable whips, but Hikvision on their back box and gooseneck has a hinging system. So you can open it up and deal with that cable whip in the service loop, make your connection, have your hands free, not have to worry about this, and then very easily put it into place and apply the hardware. So that's a good design.
And was anybody else hinged or just Hikvision?
Yeah, Hanwha. We don't have the back box here, but Hanwha offers the same thing. And then some of the other Hikvision lines too, as well, like the larger version.
Well, and I think Axis offers that, but it's in a much larger 14-inch, 16-inch enclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah, much more expensive than these. So okay.
Yeah, not really comparable to the
Right.
boxes that we were dealing with. But
Right.
yeah, absolutely. One of the negatives that we saw with Vivotech, we mentioned this quickly in the report, and the cavities or the voids for the mounting hardware are pretty small. So when I drop in a 1/4-inch bit, pretty common masonry bit size or Tapcon, it's going to bottom out there. So it's too wide for the void as it narrows to the bottom. But if I use a number 10 screw, that's going to be used with a triple grip anchor or some sort of plastic anchor that we would put into the wall or mounting surface, it passes through without a problem. So it's just important to note that if you use your own mounting hardware and you use the same thing consistently, just note that some of these cavities or voids for the hardware are going to be smaller. You might need to order smaller size Tapcons.
Right.
And one of the others features that we noticed, the Axis back box is wide open. So with that, you may have to seal around it to weatherproof it and provide protection from the elements. Whereas other manufacturers, we can take a look at Dahua, it's sealed and we have protection from the elements there. And then with looking at Hikvision again, you have knockout, so you can choose where you want your cable entry point to be. So you can either run seal tight or conduit into the back, the bottom, or the side. Right. So you have 3 options there.
All right, so what are we looking at now?
Well, we have the L brackets or the low profile mounts from Vivotech, Hanwha, and Axis. So in comparison, you can see that they're going to be a much smaller profile, much lower profile than their counterpart of a back box and a gooseneck, or even just a gooseneck alone. It's going to be a lower profile. Now, people may like these because they very simplistically take a camera instead of mounting it to the wall or the surface, they're going to downward mount it rather than outward mount it, which will help with nighttime images with IR and possibly raindrops or other weather. So they have a few different features between the manufacturers. Axis mounts directly to the surface, so there's no downward or mounting plate below, so it's an even lower profile. It is plastic material, and if I open this up, they do have a couple of features inside that are interesting, like cable management. for your network connection and other accessories. And then they actually even have a built-in spot for accessories like a microphone or media converter.
And does anyone else have that feature, the built-in accessories, or is that just
No, it's
an Axis
Axis.
specialty?
Yeah. Something unique about the Hanwha mount, it's well, plastic and metal design together. The top plate is plastic, the rest of it is metal. And then they have a standard electrical fitting back plate on it, so you can line this up to all of your standard electrical boxes, which is obviously very helpful. And then with Vivotech, they call this kind of a universal mount, so they have multiple hole patterns, so it accepts not only the line of camera that we tested, which is mid to full-size dome, but it also takes their smaller domes as well. Installers may find this one a little bit more difficult to route cable through than other comparable ones because even though it is all metal, the top doesn't remove. So you're going to have to get that cable through the pathways that they have there. So looking at a couple of Axis specialty mounts, these are unique with regards to other manufacturers, just don't have something comparable. One of the downsides is they're pretty large to accommodate the accessories and features they have. And for comparison purposes, there's a back box and gooseneck that we looked at in the other segment.
Yeah, so I mean, keep in mind when comparing these that if you did take the back box off, you would only be looking at that versus this at the least. So,
pretty substantial difference.
Yeah. So anyway, what features do we have in these that make them interesting?
Yeah, we'll take a look at this one. So this one is unique in the fact that it has a board under the hood, which accommodates either 110 block punch down, so you can use your punch down tool to terminate the cable. And that may help when a couple scenarios. We've had some members complain, integrators complain that as they approach our age and beyond, that they have trouble lining up the
Your
colors.
age and beyond, yes.
My age and beyond. That they have trouble lining up the colors into the RJ45 mod tip. So having a punch down is just going to be a little bit quicker and easier than handling a mod tip and crimping up on, again, a lift or a ladder. Also in cold weather, when that cable gets real brittle and stiff, it's just going to be a lot easier to straighten them out and punch them down rather than to flatten them and manipulate them as a group of 8 rather than individually on here. And if you do want to punch it down, if you do have an RJ45 mod tip, maybe you're replacing a camera, or you want to terminate one, all you have to do is move the cable whip, which goes to the push-pull connector that's pre-terminated when you purchase this, and that's going to now service the network card on that board rather than the 110 block.
So is the push-pull connector an Axis feature, or?
Yeah, so there's a feature that's, again, unique to Axis cameras. And what it does is locks that RJ45 mod tip into the camera. So vibrations aren't going to wiggle it out. The release tab isn't going to come undone. You actually have to put pressure downward to release it upward.
Okay.
The other thing that Axis does on their mounts is they provide a notching system. So we can take on some of the cameras, take them up. They have posts that stick through these keyholes and then twist lock, so now you have your hands free to tighten these down and do any other work that you need to do.
Yeah, we actually have a demonstration of that in
Darkfighter X.
Darkfighter X report, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good bird's eye view of it.
Yeah.
So those are the features of this. A lot different than other manufacturers have, for sure.
What's the big boy over there?
Yeah. So this one, take the lid off. So this has a large trough in the mount, which is helpful if you have a media converter that you need to house, if you have a radio antenna, if you have a PoE injector or any other accessory that you need to provide for the camera, that's going to be servicing your camera. You can put it in here and it's going to be weatherproof, protected from the elements.
And what is the foam on the back of here?
Yeah, the foam backing is
unusual.
Yeah, it is pretty unusual. So that's actually going to be the wire management to get your drop into the body. One of the things I would say, it might be an oversight or problem, when you do terminate this, if you are using a camera that's going to receive a push-pull connector, you're going to have to terminate that after the cable is through this trough, because the push-pull connectors that Axis provides are bigger than the opening here. So you're going to have to pull that cable through, terminate it, which can be a little bit awkward. But yeah, it's just a concern to have when you're using this. Looking at the recessed mounts, we'll start by looking at the dress plates and the differences that we see there. So across the manufacturers, there was a variety of differences. You can see that Dahua secures their dress plate with exposed hardware, similar to the way that Axis does it on this one. We do have another Axis mount, if you could pass that to me. A little bit different, similar to Bosch's recess mount that we looked at. It's actually a twist lock, so the dress plate goes on and notches into the back body of the recess mount. And hike vision, a little bit different. It's just magnets, so all you have to do is lift it up, and you can see the collection of magnets at the outer edge there that just go onto the frame of the recess mount.
So which one's good, which one's bad for that?
I would prefer a mount with hardware that's going to keep the dress plate on. I'd be nervous that if I install this, especially in a school or a school district, kids may take it off and start playing Frisbee with it. Or
yeah, I've actually installed some that twist on that are extremely difficult to get off, because once that's sucked up against the tile, it kind of just digs in and it's very difficult to turn. Not that you're trying to take it off every day or ever in some cases, but it can be annoying when you're doing initial aiming. So speaking of mounts, what am I holding?
Yeah, I was going to say.
You get some of these.
The other components to this one with the twist lock are the back strut and the center post. So it's a 4-piece mount, and the way that it works is this post is threaded and threads into the back strut, which is going to create a sandwich between the recess mount and the strut, and as you tighten it, it'll tighten against your drywall or ceiling tile, whatever you're mounting to. And one of the features that they put on here, they have millimeter on one side for measurements and inches on the other side for measurements. So if you know that you're dealing with a 1/2-inch drywall, you can spin this in freely at a comfortable position rather than working overhead or up on a ladder or lift to that 1/2-inch position, and then go ahead and seat that on there and only have to fine tighten it rather than have to coarse tighten it.
So how much time do you think that saves, if any?
I installed all of these, and I would probably say a couple to a few minutes, which isn't that big of a deal, but if you're doing
100 cameras, 1,000 cameras,
a large job, then could add up for you.
So that one's fully enclosed.
Yeah, so this is a plenum back box as opposed to this, which is obviously open. And most of the recess mounts that we looked at were just a open metal skeleton, if you will. And basically the technology that they're using, the way that they're mounting these, is really similar to, we've all installed low voltage brackets where the wings kick out and sandwich the wall behind or the mounting surface. And that's really how this works. The cover plate comes off, you tighten the screw, the wing kicks out and then tightens against the mounting surface. In Axis, the wings, when they kick out and drive, the material that's used is fluid when you're tightening this. It really has a smooth motion and tightens nicely. So this was by far the easiest one to drive in without any slipping or sticking or binding.
So what is this panel on the back for then? I haven't seen that on any of the others.
Yeah, so you can
hold that up so we can see
you can remove the panel, and underneath you have access to get hardware to mount to stud.
Oh, so if I were mounting it in a ceiling with wood joists or something like that.
Exactly. We also evaluated a bunch of pendant mounts. The one that you're holding is from Axis, and it's a swivel mount and telescoping, so it has a couple of features that some other pendants don't have. Many pendants are just a fixed length, or you can select from a different size drop. With this telescoping mount, you can extend it pretty good range, and it also pivots, which is beneficial for two different scenarios. One is if you have a vaulted ceiling, you can permanently fix it in that position. The other is if you have an area where you're concerned with forklifts or other people on a lift or something else that might come into contact with your camera, it's just going to kind of knock it out of the way and return to level for you. So a couple different use cases for the same mount there. And then if you do need to drop it down, again, it is a telescopic mount, similar to the mount that we have from Hanwha. One of the differences that I saw between the two is for this, they have set screws that are Allen key, small Allen key, as opposed to a typical security industry hardware, which is a T25, a Torx bit that you're very likely going to have on your driver. Some of the other differences that we saw with these, one of the features that I personally like for aesthetics is the base being covered, so some sort of way to dress that in, which this is Dahua, so they provide that. And also the axis mount that you were demonstrating also has a cover plate that dresses it in. So looking at the pole mount adapters, these may be the most common mounts that we saw. Do you agree? The most similar, sorry.
Yeah.
So the design from manufacturer to manufacturer is really simple. Basically create a surface that can go onto a pole and then be strapped or banded to that pole through the slots on the side, and then provide some hole mounts for a variety of different cameras that they manufacture. Really, really similar. Some of the differences that we have seen between mounts are some are manufactured with teeth so that you could tap them into timber pole.
Well, I've heard varying reports. Some people said it was so you can actually put this against a timber pole, like a telephone pole, and then tap it in and hold it, but that seems really insecure to me. I think it's meant basically just to grip the wood, but in my experience and in our tests, it didn't really make much of a difference. And when you're on metal poles, I think these are actually kind of annoying, to be honest.
Yeah, typically what I do is use either a zip tie or Velcro strapping to temporarily hold it up before I strap or band it permanently. And speaking of strapping and banding, the Bosch mount that we got was a little bit different. It actually came with banding rather than straps like the other manufacturers provide. So Bosch includes this steel band and the collars that would receive this. They provide a couple. So one of the things with Bosch, if you're going to use this, which may or may not be required in more secure environments, is you're going to need a banding tool. In addition to the banding tool, you may also want to have, you can cut the band with this, but you may want to have aviation shears or something else that you're going to be able to cut this to length and approximately size it.
So what does everyone else ship with then, if not steel band like that?
So Hikvision sends a strap rather than banding, and it's a quick release strap. So you may be sacrificing a little bit of security from this, but you're getting a little bit of convenience. The worm screw here, a little auger bit that drives that threading through. As soon as you have a little bit of slack, enough room where it's not tight on the pole, you can push, release that, and pull it right out. Whereas others from other manufacturers, and by the way, this is a Phillips or flathead bit, Torx bit here, and you can drive that in, but you're going to have to.
And that was Axis?
Yeah, you're going to have to drive this in. With your driver, it might not be too bad, but it's a lot of
Just so
excess.
we're clear, it is.
Yeah.
Axis is sending a lot of excess. I can't really straighten this out here, but I mean, that's enough to go around like a pole on the interstate, basically. Yeah, so probably would want to snip this to length and then wrap it around and tighten it up. Otherwise, you're driving all of that length.
Exactly, yep.
So the Dahua is quite a bit smaller, I notice. Looks like it's sized more for the mount or the back box on that mount. Yeah, so again, real similar. We have the holes for strapping or banding and hole pattern to receive the camera. However, this one's going to be covered or concealed by the back box or the gooseneck alone.
So it's a more streamlined look. Yeah, a little bit more compact look, rather than others, which when we put the Vivotech gooseneck directly to the mount, you can see that there's still a lot exposed, about an inch all the way around.
So I see we're looking at some boxes.
Yeah, it might not seem very exciting, but it could possibly save you some time and headache. So I know when I was in my van or looking through the warehouse for parts, it's very easy to confuse part numbers. 6 or 7 digit string of characters. You think you have one thing and you wind up with another. So I thought it was noteworthy to call out that Bosch has a black and white sketch of their part, so you know exactly what you're getting. Dahua has a color picture on theirs, and Hikvision also has a color picture of the component within the box on it. So you have the part number, you have the manufacturer name, and a color picture for Hikvision Dahua, which is just going to make it a lot easier picking parts when you're trying to...
It's probably a good thing, because I don't know that I would know the difference between a WML and a WMS and a whatever.
Short or long. That's the difference. But yeah.
Well, I know that, but
yeah, after doing
based
a
on
report,
picture. Yeah.
But yeah, looking at the Axis part number, for example, T94K02L, it says recess mount, but I'm not sure. Is that the plenum mount? Is that the skeleton mount?
P32, Q35, M30.
What does it service? Or is it just a plastic mount? So job well done on the manufacturers that have pictures on them. Definitely going to make it easier picking parts and ensuring that you have the right materials for the job.